feel good, right? How's everybody feeling? What an inspiration to see hundreds of brand partners celebrate their new rank advancements. Just like all of you climbing the ranks towards your goals, our next speaker has made a notable climb or two in her lifetime. It's an honor to introduce this woman. Just listen to her bio. Allison Levine is no stranger to punishing environments. She has survived sub-zero temperatures, hurricane-force winds, sudden avalanches, and worst of all, a career on Wall Street. Allison has climbed the highest peak on every continent, served as the team captain of the first American women's Everest expedition, and skied across the Arctic Circle to the geographic North Pole. In January 2008, she made history as the first American to follow a remote route across West Antarctica for 600 miles to the South Pole. She completed this arduous journey on skis while hauling 150 pounds of her gear and supplies in a sled harnessed to her waist. That's not all. Listen to this. Her success in extreme environments is noteworthy given she had 3 heart surgeries and also suffers from a neurological disease that causes the arteries that feed her fingers and toes to collapse in cold weather, leaving her at extreme risk for frostbite. Allison spent 4 years as an adjunct professor at the United States Military Academy at West Point, where she focused on the topic of leading teams in extreme environments. She is the author of the New York Times bestseller On the Edge, which is a compilation of lessons she learned during her various expeditions, and she's here today to share some of those lessons with all of you. Is that not an incredible biography? Please welcome Allison Levine.
Wow, you guys, wow. Hello. Wow, that's quite a greeting. Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here with all of you today. You heard a little bit about some of my outdoor adventures, of course, and you know I'm also an author. My book's called On the Edge. My favorite Amazon review said, all the suspense of Into Thin Air, but without the depression. And that's actually a photograph of me on the cover. People think it's an illustration. But it's a photo of me climbing Denali in Alaska, which is the highest peak in North America. And, oh, thanks. People ask me for advice on this mountain all the time. They'll say, Denali, it's really cold and steep. Give me some advice. So I just say, stay left. Now, I know all of you are climbing your own mountains, so what I thought I'd do in the time we have together is share with you some of my favorite lessons from the book, focusing on the American Women's Everest Expedition, because this is a climb where I think I learned more great lessons about tackling challenge, overcoming obstacles, and achieving big goals in times of uncertainty. I learned more about those things on this trip than I learned on probably any other trip that I'd been on. So this is a climb that took place in 2002. In 2001, I got a phone call asking me if I wanted to serve as the team captain for the trip. And initially, when I got that phone call, I said no. Just because even though I had climbed the highest peak on 6 continents and had done a lot of other climbing in between, I still really felt like, I don't know, I wasn't going to be good enough, I wasn't going to be fast enough, I wasn't going to be strong enough. It just felt like way more challenge than I was ready to take on at the time. But then I realized there was only going to be one first American Women's Everest expedition, and if I didn't step up to the plate to be the team captain, somebody else was going to do it. Somebody else was going to be living my dream adventure. So I ended up calling his women back and agreeing to serve as the team captain. And at the time, I still really didn't know if I had what it was going to take to get up that mountain. But I knew if I didn't step up to the plate and try, that I would never find out. And I think there are times in your life where you just have to step up, even if you feel like you aren't ready. And I ran across this quote when I was contemplating the whole thing. It's a quote by the first woman who ever climbed Mount Everest, and our friends here from Japan will recognize her name, Junko Taibei. And she reminds us that when it comes to getting to the top, it is not just about technique and ability, it is also very much about willpower, right? So I knew for sure that I had willpower, but one thing I knew for sure that I didn't have was money. I was about $70,000 in debt thanks to all my student loans, and no one else I knew who was a climber had any money. So we had to go out and raise the funds for this trip. And I ended up connecting with a friend of mine who worked for Ford. Just because I didn't know you guys yet, I would have hit you up for some money for sure. 100% I would have. But my friend Kevin, who worked for Ford, he helped us funnel the idea of the first American women's Everest expedition up to the senior Ford executives in Michigan. They looked at our proposal, and they actually agreed to fund the entire trip. Right? I know, so grateful. Well, and the reason that Ford agreed to fund us was because our expedition just happened to coincide with the launch of their new full-size SUV, which is, of course, the Ford. Yes, the Ford Expedition. So it was their expedition in conjunction with our expedition, and it was this match made in heaven. And I was so relieved that things worked out well with Ford, just because I was also negotiating with Chevy at the time. And their full-size SUV is the Avalanche. So, call me crazy, but I'm just thinking if you're gonna go to Everest, you want to be sponsored by the expedition, not by the Avalanche. So it worked out pretty well. Next thing I had to do is pull together the team. And this is an interesting process because you have to find people who are the perfect mix of skill and experience, but who are also going to be really, really strong team players. So this is our team. Kim Clark on the far left, that's me next to Kim. Jody Thompson in the middle, then you have Midge Cross and Lynn Preble. And I can honestly say if I had to pull together another team of women, it would be the exact same ones. Oh, that's us at the New York Auto Show. Ford took us out there right before we left for Nepal. They took us out there to unveil the new 2003 Ford Expedition. It's the only full-size SUV with independent rear suspension and optional third-row power-fold seats. Gotta plug the sponsor. All right, so I had the team, I had the funding, I got a 2-month unpaid leave of absence from work, and all of a sudden I am thinking, holy crap, we're really going. And then it hit me, and the thought of going from sea level to 29,000 feet above sea level absolutely made my head spin, because the process of climbing this mountain is not at all straightforward. It's going to take you 10 days of hiking just to get yourself to base camp. Once you get to base camp, you have to spend a few days and nights there to get used to the altitude, because it's over 17,000 feet, right, about 5,300 meters. So once you've been there for a few days, then you pack up your stuff and you climb up to Camp 1. You spend the night up there at Camp 1, and the next day after you spend the night up there, you pack up your stuff and you come back down to base camp again. Spend a few more nights at base camp again. Next day, climb to Camp 1 again and spend the night. And then the next day, you climb up here to Camp 2, and you spend the night up there at Camp 2. And the next day, after you spend the night up there, you pack up your stuff, and you come back down to that base camp again. Spend a few more nights at base camp again. Next day, climb to Camp 1 again, spend the night. Next day, climb to Camp 2 again, spend the night. Then the next day, you're gonna spend about 9 or 10 hours fighting your way up there to Camp 3. It's almost 24,000 feet above sea level, 7,200 meters. And the next day, guess where you go? Yes, all the way back down to base camp again. So the reason you have to keep coming back down to base camp is because you have to let your body get used to the altitude very slowly. It's this process called acclimatization. If someone were to magically drop you off on the summit of Mount Everest, if you could be dropped up there by a plane or a helicopter, something like that, you would be dead in a matter of minutes from the altitude. So you have to move up this mountain really slowly just so your head doesn't pop off when you get to the very top. I mean, it doesn't really just, pop off. But the catch is that anytime you're above about 18,000 feet, about 5,300 meters, anytime you're above that elevation, your body is starting to deteriorate and your muscles are getting weaker. So it's this crazy catch-22 of wanting to spend time up high to get used to the altitude, but you have to keep coming back down low so you can eat, sleep, hydrate, and regain some strength. So not only is it very physically challenging to be going up and back down again, and up higher and back down, but psychologically, it is incredibly frustrating as well, because you know you need to be going this way, right? But you're spending a heck of a lot of time climbing in this direction. But what you have to remember is that even though you are going completely backwards, you're still making progress, right? Because you're helping your body acclimatize. You are, and you are making progress. And for whatever reason, we tend to think that progress has to happen in one particular direction. But that's not the case. Sometimes you are going to have to go backward for a bit in order to eventually get to where you want to be. So do not look at that backtracking as losing ground. Look at it as an opportunity to regroup, regain some strength, so you're better out of the gates the next time around. Backing up is not the same as backing down. That's one of my best lines, by the way, so yeah, thanks, thank you. If you're gonna write down anything from this presentation, I would go with that. I think that's the best one. This is a shot of base camp on Mount Everest. Did anyone here see the movie Vertical Limit? Okay, well, it's nothing like that. No keg parties or bonfires or s'mores, just a bunch of rocks and some tents. Now, the first part of the route, once you leave base camp, has a lot going on, and that's this area here called the Khumbu Icefall. This is one of the most dangerous parts of the mountain. And what makes the Khumbu Icefall so dangerous is the fact that it's made up of 2,000 vertical feet of these big, huge, moving ice chunks. These ice blocks are massive. They are the size of small buildings. And what happens is the sun comes up, everything starts to melt. These big, huge ice blocks start to shift around, so you're in constant danger of being crushed. Right? That's 7 ladders strung together at about 20,000 feet of elevation. And then it's made more complicated by the fact that there are these big, huge open crevasses everywhere where you could fall hundreds of feet to your death. So they span these rickety aluminum ladders across them so you can get from one side to the other without falling in. So between the big, huge moving ice chunks and the ladders and the open crevasses, it is a very scary part of the mountain. But this Khumbu Icefall is also where I learned some great lessons about fear. And I've got about 30 seconds of video to show you what it's like to go through that icefall. Here you go. Thank you so much. So you get the idea. Definitely a very scary part of the climb. But this ice fall is also where I learned one of the best lessons about managing fear, which is this. All right, listen. Fear is okay. It's just a normal human emotion. Complacency is what will kill you. You have to be able to act and react quickly when you're in these environments that are constantly shifting and changing. And I don't think any of us have seen as much shifting and changing in the world as what we've seen over the past few years. And we know it's not slowing down anytime soon. So fear is fine. Complacency will absolutely do you in. And here's what I want you to remember. You can be scared and brave at the same time. You can. You can be scared and brave at the same time. These are, oh, thanks. Yeah, you can clap for that. Thanks. Okay, maybe that's one of my best lines. I don't know. These are the boots that we wear once we leave base camp. They cost about $950. But if you break that down, it's only $95 a toe. Yeah, so if you want to keep all of yours, you suck it up and buy these boots. Camp 1 on the other side of the ice fall, not a lot going on there. Here's the team at Camp 2, bringing sexy back. I'm 5'4", tallest person out of all of us. We were so short, we had to have these down suits custom made. But we liked them because we thought they were kind of flattering. And I know one question people always have when they see these pictures. They always have this question, and no one ever wants to ask it, but I know people are wondering. And it's, of course, that question of, how do you go to the bathroom up there? And let me tell you, as a woman, it is super complicated because you've got on this big, huge, bulky down suit over 6 layers of clothing, and it's a gazillion degrees below zero, and there's hurricane force winds, and you're, wearing a safety harness strapped into this line. Like, trying to get out of, your down suit, all your layers, squat, balance, it's very, very difficult. And it's also actually a little dangerous. So we came up with a solution to that, which I will demonstrate. No, I'm not gonna demonstrate. I'm just gonna show you what it is, because I know people wonder. Okay, this is just what we call the pee funnel. And this little device allows women to urinate standing up. There you go. So we don't have to go through that whole balancing act anymore. And we can finally do that one thing that we have always been envious of men for. You know what it is? We can write our name in the snow. There you have it. Now you know. Now you know. All right, moving right along. Okay, here's our team getting ready to head up to Camp 3. One of the toughest days on the mountain, just a long slog on hard, steep blue ice. Takes about 9 or 10 hours to get there. This is a shot of me pulling into Camp 3. This was a particularly memorable moment for me because I puked all over myself right before they took that shot, so that is a totally fake smile. It is. But for me, this is a reminder that even when you're incredibly uncomfortable, you still have to get out there and keep moving, right? Doing hard stuff is uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable, it's hard. And the closer you get to the top of the mountain, the more uncomfortable you feel, right? Because you're gaining elevation and you get altitude sickness. You have a banging altitude headache. You feel sick to your stomach. But you can keep going even when you feel uncomfortable. So that's 24,000 feet on the side of a mountain, about 7,200 meters. Everybody feels super crappy at that elevation. But you don't turn around and quit. You get back out there, on the mountain, you keep climbing, and you do it for your team. Okay, Mount Everest is a really, 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 really bad place for control freaks. There are all these things that are going to affect your climb that you have zero control over. The weather is the most obvious of those things, of course. So sometimes you look up at the summit of Mount Everest and it looks like this, and it looks like it might be pretty approachable. But within a matter of minutes, everything can change and it will look like that. And that is pretty darn intimidating. But the one thing you know about these storms is that they're always temporary. Storms are always temporary. There is no such thing as the storm that lasts forever. So you know when you're in the middle of something like this, you just have to keep your bearings, and at some point, clouds are gonna go away. Everything will look a whole lot better. But the key to surviving this is that you have to be able to take action based on the situation at the time and not based on your plan. Because while planning's really important, of course you're gonna have a solid plan. Keeps you organized, keeps you motivated, keeps you on track. But what you have to remember is that when you're in these very dynamic environments where things are constantly shifting and changing, whatever plan you came up with last year, last month, last week, even this morning, your plan is already outdated. Your plan's outdated as soon as it's finished when you're in these environments that are constantly shifting and changing. So yes, of course, plan, but you can't be hell-bent on sticking to that plan no matter what. You want to be much more focused on executing based on what is going on at the time. Here is a shot of our team heading up to the high camp. This is me at the high camp. You are more than welcome to borrow this picture and tell people it's you. Nobody will ever know. Meredith's looking good up there, isn't she? All right, so the high camp, it's at 26,000 feet, 8,000 meters, also known as the death zone. And they call it the death zone for a really good reason, and that's because at that elevation, human life can no longer be sustained, and your body is slowly starting to die. At this elevation, you have to take about 5 to 10 breaths for every step. That's how many breaths you have to take just to catch your breath enough to take one step. So it looks kind of like this. You take a step, and then you do this. 5 to 10 times before you feel ready to do this. Step again, 5 to 10 breaths again before you can do this. Okay, so if you ever think you're having a slow day, it could be so much worse. Okay, so get up to the high camp in the afternoon. We lay down for a couple of hours to rest our bones and our muscles, and at 10:30 at night, we get out of our tent to start heading to the summit. So 10:30, pitch dark, freezing cold. You wear a headlamp on your forehead so you can see down the trail. And I got out of my tent, and I'm thinking, okay, we're at 26,000 feet, but we need to be at 29,035 feet to be at the summit. Okay, that's more than 3,000 vertical feet alone we need to cover, not to mention all the horizontal distance. And I start doing the math. One step, 5 to 10 breaths, 3,000 vertical feet. I start to get completely freaked out and intimidated, thinking, there's just no way. I'm not going to be fast enough. I'm not going to be strong enough. So the only way I could really wrap my brain around what we had to do and feel like it was realistic is by breaking that summit day down into much smaller parts. So for the time being, I stopped stressing out about the summit. I took my headlamp and I shined it on this big rock that I could see down the trail. And I thought, okay, I just need to make it to that rock. That's where I'm going right now, just to that rock. So I take my step, 5 to 10 breaths. Step again, 5 to 10 breaths. Before I knew it, made it to that big rock. Once I got to that rock, I did the same thing again. Took my headlamp, shined it on a big chunk of ice. Just anything I could stare at that looked like it wasn't that far away. Okay, I am just going to that big chunk of ice. I can make it there. So step, 5 to 10 breaths. Then I'd make it to the big chunk of ice. So every time I would think to myself, oh man, I don't know if I can do this. I don't think I'm going to be fast enough. I would think, well, hang on, because I did make it to this landmark, so since I made it to this one, maybe I can make it to one more. All right, now that I made it to this one, maybe I could make it to just one more. And I'm taking whoever that was climbing with me next time. Whoever just yelled, you're coming with me. Yes, I love you, thank you. All right, so we climbed through the whole entire night that way. The whole entire night that way. By 6:30 in the morning, we were at a place called the South Summit, which is just a couple hundred feet below the true summit of Mount Everest. And at that point, storm clouds started to come in. So that's where we had to make a very tough call. And the first American women's Everest expedition turned around just a few hundred feet, about 70 meters, from the summit of Mount Everest. Trust me when I tell you that turning around and walking away from the deal is harder than continuing on. But when you're up there in these mountains, you have to be able to make very tough decisions when the conditions around you are far from perfect. And you have to think about how every single move you make is going to affect everybody else around you and not just you. So it doesn't matter how much blood, sweat, and tears you personally put into something. If the conditions aren't right, you turn around, you cut your losses, and you walk away. You do. Sometimes you gotta walk away. Look, Mount Everest, it's just a pile of rock and ice. It's really all it is. You can always go back. But if you do something dumb up there, you may not have the opportunity to go back. And we all know of instances where one person's poor judgment has brought down an entire organization, right? Same thing in the mountains. One person's bad decision can bring down an entire team. And look at all the sad faces. Just so you know, that distance is just about 270 feet, but that would take us several hours, right? No, I know. I feel like you're looking at me and you're looking at this and you're like, you should have just run and touched the tippy top. Run back down. You can't run up there. You're taking 10 breaths for every step. So that's where we turned around. Good thing we did. Got caught in a whiteout on our descent. We had to spend the night at 26,000 feet in a storm. Not where you want to spend the night. You want to get down to a lower, safer elevation. But we couldn't see well enough to make that happen. So we spent a pretty scary night just trying to not get blown off the mountain. And we did get a bit of a break in the weather the next day. We were able to start heading back down to base camp. And yes, it's disappointing to spend 2 months on that mountain, because that's how long an Everest expedition takes, 2 months. And you miss it by what feels like that much. But you only have enough gear, supplies, and oxygen to go for it one time. Once you've burned through most of your oxygen supply, the way we did, getting that close, you don't have enough left to try it again. So you spend your 2 months on the mountain, you make it to the top or you don't, you head back down, and that's the way it goes. But I think as long as, I don't know, you come back alive, come back with all your fingers and toes. Consider that a pretty good trip. Thank you. Thanks. I'm happy to be here with you today.